11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
GearWebsites.com. GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
And welcome, everybody, to our Daily Gun Show. And on Fridays, we do the weekly wrap-up. And we're a little late today, so apologize to all the people listening live. We got Velcro Rumble out there. Welcome. It says there's a bunch of other people listening, so we'll see if those are people that are asleep and just left their computer on, or if they're actually listening in the middle of the night. So we do this show in the middle of the night. We do it at midnight Eastern. Typically, I think right now it is 5 a.m. Eastern. So, yeah, I was working on my roof yesterday, and I went to lay down, and a couple hours later, I woke back up. So nap turns into a long nap, and everybody suffers. But welcome. There's DJ out there. Welcome to everybody who's joining us live. Otherwise, we'll just do the show the old-fashioned way, and we'll start off with opening up the window here and looking at our Substack. This is where we put the description of this video. This is where the guts of this show are each week here on Patreon and in the description of the video. But among all those places, there we go. Among all those places, Substack gives us the best formatting, so that's what we use up on the screen here. But of course, we're also podcasting out there to Podbean, so we'll open that up and send everybody a link. We've consolidated all of our podcasts over at Podbean, so you can still listen to us on Apple or iTunes or whatever it's called now. iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places you might want to listen to a podcast. It's just that for us, it's all in one place. So we're able to see the numbers and things. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast. That's where the majority of the people find the show. And let's dig into it. So let's see. This week, we've had kind of some things going on. And that's what our job here is, to kind of focus on those things and keep a running focus on the different things that are happening out there. So we'll start off with some of the news of the week, the Second Amendment news. We'll talk about the shows that are focused on what the Second Amendment protects this week. Then we look at some gun stuff, some of our friends and people that we follow that just talk about more general gun stuff in general. Then we'll get into some radio shows that are focused on the Second Amendment. We've got our gun calendars, depending on the time. We'll take a look over there. There's some military interview shows that I listen to that are definitely worth your time. And then we'll take a look at the stuff that we worked on this week at the end of the show. So I'm trying to scroll here for the people that are listening. And I don't know if my computer's over well or if it's just being glitchy. I guess I can close down my ChatGPT. It doesn't need to be open. And I don't think I need this open either. I'm trying to close things up, make my computer run a little bit better. So let's dig into it. We take this information that we're going to talk about today and we post it on YouTube in the description of the video. Then we put it on Spotify or on Substack and over on Patreon, like I mentioned. And that means all these links that we're going to talk about today are in all those places. And then when we put it over on the podcasting place, if you click on read more, you'll see all these links are over here with the show also. I picked a bad week there, but our goal is to spread this information around the internet as much as possible because we're talking about other people. We're talking about valid projects that are getting work done. So we put that stuff over on Patreon. We put it on Substack. To some extent, we do things on Instagram. And then the podcast, for us at least, are where most of the information gets out there, or I guess is our largest broadcasting platform at this point. So we'll digging into the news of the week, and I get all of the information this week, and usually most of the information each week from a NSSF newsletter that comes out on Friday, the industry newsletter that they send out each week. And it's actually pretty wordy, and it has a lot of extra stuff in there, but I whittle that down to the bullet points that we're going to talk about here. And every once in a while, there's something else that happens that's not on their radar that we'll include here as well. But this is August, and that means it's National Shooting Sports Month. And, there's lots of months. Every month has a couple of different things that it is, right? And I think that the shooting sports, the months that, have something to do with the shooting sports are worth paying attention to. We don't have very many of these month-long opportunities to work together cross-platform within the gun community. And, once we all are focused on growth and unity, I think we'll be using these more. But just mentioning that it's about halfway through the month, and it is National Shooting Sports Month. Check out NSSF. They do a lot of stuff. I think they probably created this, but other people participate for sure. So if you look around, you'll find people that are mentioning it or participating in it or maybe doing some kind of a special event. Then we have NSSF, the place that gives us this newsletter, is the National Shooting Sports Foundation. And they started, their origins go back to I think the 60s, if I remember right. And essentially we used to have industry trade shows regionally, essentially. So different parts of the country would host industry trade shows. And at some point, the industry started to look around at each other and go, when is this going to end? We have 6 or 8 industry shows every year that if we don't attend them, we're missing big chunks of the country. So we're kind of obligated to attend them. So NSSF happened when, what happened now? Some event happened in Virginia or someplace. And the people that ran that event kind of looked at each other and said, why don't we add this event to the agenda? And there was sort of why do we need another event? And the answer was, well, let's make this event a national one. So that there's this one event, one industry trade show people can go to. Well, it turns out that ended up being successful. I think it started in the 80s, right? So then St. Louis. So I think it started in St. Louis in the 80s, and then fast forward to now, and it's essentially the only. There are a couple of trade shows that happen still, I guess not really regionally, but for other focus areas. There are other trade shows, but the big one, the one that most people attend, is called SHOT Show. So NSSF started with that original kind of object, but they became quickly the industry, the firearms and gun and hunting industry association. So their job was to kind of provide a buffer or a translation between the industry and the government agencies that regulate the industry. And that's where they kind of sat for a long time. And then as SHOT Shows become more part of our culture, instead of just being an industry thing, NSSF's role has changed quite a bit too. And with the change in the NRA over the last 10, 20 years, the NSSF's role has changed. And with the awareness provided by the internet, people like me talking about it all the time, NSSF is on people's radar, and it has a bigger footprint or impact on the community now. So speaking about all that, to kind of give you some idea what NSSF is, where they came from, how they kind of fit into our culture, our community. We've got GOAL. We have the Gun Owners Action League out of Massachusetts, who's dealing with probably the most abusive anti-rights situation that we've got going on. I don't want to say ever, because California dealt with this often. Washington dealt with this. Oregon has dealt with it. Colorado's dealt with it. Nevada's dealt with it. Minnesota has dealt with this. And not to mention Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Maryland, all the different states back east that are dealing with this. But it's pretty heinous in Massachusetts. They already had a jackboot on their neck, and now they decided to just lean their entire weight onto that jackboot and just choke out the gun owners in Massachusetts, heinously. And this is done because their legislator meets every 72 hours. How ridiculous is that? Their legislator, their representatives at the state level, meet every 72 hours just to busy themselves with something. And they've decided that bullying gun owners and the rights of gun owners is a great virtue signal or something. and maybe to the rest of the country to show how awesome they are to be mean to gun owners or to just respect rights. And they've just really smashed Massachusetts recently. So nothing's being done. There's some people that are exploiting the situation by laughing at them or pointing at them. But aside from that, very little, if anything, is being done from outside of Massachusetts for the situation. But I noticed that NSSF donated $100,000 to GOAL, which is the state level pro rights organization there. And they've been around for a long time, very worthy and effective organization considering the challenge they have in the state they're in. And they gave them, or NSSF gave them $100,000. So NSSF brings in the third most money or the second most money, I guess. But it's hard to say they bring in that much money considering how much they spend on SHOT Show each year. So they do bring in a bunch of money, and then they provide SHOT Show. So the money left over from that is not, they're not the largest organization. So them to donate $100,000 to Massachusetts specifically for the situation is worth mentioning. So they're talking about it because they did it, and they need to tell their subscribers and their members, what they're doing. But I'm hoping that I get that word out to more people, because I think it's despicable that we've got what's happening in Massachusetts happening again. It happened in Washington. Nobody did shit. Everybody just watched it. It happened in Oregon. Everybody just watched it. It happened in Nevada. Nobody even paid attention. Nobody even watched it happen in Nevada. Now, luckily in Oregon and in Nevada, people were able to fight back and it didn't take effect. But in Washington, it was heinous, and they're suffering. Other states back east, it happened earlier, so I wasn't paying attention when it happened. I was too young, I think. But this stuff happens, and we can either play the role of observers and sit in our seats and watch as an audience, or we can get up, roll up our sleeves, and do something about it. So glad to see NSSF putting $100,000 at least towards the effort. We need sister states. We need other states to work with the states that are getting abused so that they're not alone. And I think there should be an effort towards that. But here nor there. Next, we get to the next bullet point, Senate Bill 4972, which is called the Lawful Purpose and Historical Firearms Act. And that would essentially revise the federal law to remove sporting purpose from the 1968 Gun Control Act, Title I of our national firearms laws. Started in 1968 to put a sporting purpose on imports, meaning that essentially they say that the gun industry and, of course, anti-rights people were behind it. But after World War II in 1968, so quite a bit after World War II, but recently after World War II, there was a lot of World War II stockpile being eliminated from armories or Soviet countries that became private. So there's a lot of inventory out there of firearms from way before the Cold War, from the buildup of the two world wars, and that was being sold inexpensively. So that bothered people who hate rights, and it bothered the industry who liked making new stuff. So they created this list of criteria that a firearm being imported into the country would have to meet. And it's things like the caliber and the length and the type of material it's made out of and the sights on it and all kinds of little criteria. And that's why some guns cannot be imported into the United States still. They don't serve a sporting purpose. They either look too crazy or they don't have a sporting purpose for whatever reason, and they don't get qualified to import. The specific one that everybody used to remember was the GLOCKs and the subcalibers. They were too small of a caliber, and the gun was not a target gun, so they couldn't import them for a long time until they started building them here. But I think that's a great effort. We need to take things the other way. Instead of just being defensive all the time, we need to change unnecessary laws. And the sporting purpose is horrible, and we've lived with it way too long. We've lived in it for generations now, and it's heinous. It's no need for it at all. Removing it would allow lots of stuff like SKSs and some of the stuff that's been deemed unnecessary on the streets type of bullshit. Anyway, so good to see. I forgot what state the lady was from who started that one, but I think it was like Wisconsin or Minnesota or Montana or one of those states. The next bullet point, The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit Court found that Biden-Harris administration's rule reclassifying pistol brace as short barrel rifles is arbitrary and capricious. So that's good news. The Eighth Circuit is not the Ninth Circuit. And it's not the Fifth Circuit. So it's good to see a different circuit court coming up with freedom as the answer. Next bullet point, Marquette University, which found nearly 70, I think they had a poll, sorry, a Marquette University poll found nearly 70% of adults approved of the Supreme Court's New York State the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association decision there. Anyway, if you're listening, give me some feedback. If you're on X, you're allowed to feedback. You're allowed to comment, and if you comment, and I can put it on the screen, just like here with the DJ saying no audio. Is there no audio? Am I back or no? Okay, thanks. Yeah, my screen went blank, so it's telling me that I'm having a poor connection. So I appreciate all the people that stick with during my issues. I don't know why my internet's bad. It's been upgraded, so I don't know why my internet would be doing bad. Maybe they do some kind of thing in the middle of the night. Looks like it might be coming back. I'm gonna use this opportunity to play a commercial and drink something. I'm getting excruciatingly dry. Is that the right way to say it? I'm getting very dry over here. So here's a commercial that our friend Foss made for us. So I just put up, there's no audio on that. I just remembered, I just figured, or I just realized that there's no audio on that. So people that are listening to the podcast have no idea why it just had a little music there. That was a promo for She Fires, who does a show on Sundays. I should probably do something that, more descriptive for that plug. But I don't know if she'll actually have a show this week. DJ, do you know? She might be traveling to or at goals. I'm not sure. But She Fires typically goes live when she's around, when she's not traveling, on Sundays to do a show. It's worth checking out, and it's a live show. All right, so after the Marquette University poll, we get to somebody from Kentucky who is the chairman of the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Oversight and Accountability, is putting pressure on the city of Chicago about their lawsuit against GLOCK. And I'm a big fan of that because, at least back in the day, GLOCK has been instrumental in changing public policy due to their stance, due to their position during a lawsuit at a national level. So hopefully they've got that same fortitude, and the GLOCK, the company, will stand firm and fight Chicago. And there's like a whole gang of Bloomberg money behind the fight from Chicago. And essentially it's to redirect the blame for the political situation and the violence to suggest somehow that GLOCK is responsible. And I'm assuming because the GLOCK switches that were created by China and flooded the streets of the United States, the same as fentanyl, that somehow GLOCK is responsible for that. DJ is saying that She Fires should have the show. She didn't say otherwise. Okay, that's good to hear. Thanks. Saints out there, welcome. I was sleeping. That's why the show's late. I laid down. I got the show already about an hour early. Hub Hillbilly was taking over for Gizzard, and I'm like, I'm just going to lay my head down for a minute. It'd be no big deal. I'll just set a bunch of alarms. And then I woke up long enough to say, hey, the show's going to be late in the comments. And then here we are hours later because I slept for a little while. Let's see. Problem is it was super hot, and I opened up the window because it was about to thunderstorm. It didn't, but it was acting like it was going to. So we had all these thunderclouds coming in and a bunch of cool wind breeze coming through. And, fell asleep. Sorry. Let's see. Silencer You know what? I bet you that's Silencer Co. Or is that Silencer Shop? I think it might be Silencer Shop. Contributed $25,000 to NSF's Protect Liberty Political Action Committee. So, okay. I don't remember the details on that one, but I'm pretty sure that's Silencer Shop. I think they're out of Montana. Where are they from? And then lastly, it just says Amateur Trap Shooting Association. So the ATA has become an official partner of NSSF's First Shots program. So I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, people that are becoming a gun owner and go to some place to get a kind of an introductory orientation to gun owning, is shotguns the first thing you want to put in their hands? I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but it's just very, you know, of all the stuff that people shoot, shotguns are not the number one thing. And Amateur Trap Shooting Association, I know they've been suffering, along with skeet shooting and all the other shotgun sports, all the shooting sports really, but the shotgun sports as well. And I don't know. I mean, it's certainly fun. It's more fun to shoot shotguns than it is to shoot anything else. But anyway, just interesting. It'd be great to see a conversation on that somewhere. All right, so that's the news. As I say, I get most of that news from the NSSF newsletter. Every once in a while, there's something else out there that I'll add to that with. And I probably could do a better job of hitting some of the real big news, but some of the giant political news, I don't bother putting in here because it's usually just we've been beaten with it all week. And, you know, I'm literally repeating everything else that's already been said. I'll usually try to dig out stuff that isn't the obvious news of the week. But give me some feedback. You're the one that's listening to this side. I'm not trying to, you know, offer some, you know, here's what it is. This is supposed to be a useful project. So if let me know what's useful for you. All right. So we'll get into the things that we watched this week, or I watched this week, that were focused on what the Second Amendment protects specifically. And I put them in kind of order of how relevant they are, or if you're going to listen to something first, you know, start here and work your way down. So the first thing I almost always have in the list is Brooke Cheney doing her Suicide Prevention Saturday project. Now, it is Saturday right now, so later on today, Brooke will be going live for usually less than a half an hour, just a brief, consistent effort to normalize the conversation about mental health so that mental health becomes something that's normalized, that we become aware of, and we're competent and confident in our conversations with ourselves, so that we can all, you know, understand this aspect. And more importantly, or just as importantly, I guess, the other side, the anti-rights people, who often are just ignorant, and not because they're stupid, but because they're been fed a line without any challenge that guns are somehow dangerous, and they can't understand that they deal with so many dangerous things in a day, but somehow guns are, you know, highlighted as the only dangerous or the most dangerous thing. And it's kind of funny, as people who are gun owners who are comfortable with them, but unfortunately it's the fact. And when they have that ignorant stance, they're easily manipulated. So Brooke's project on normalizing the conversation about mental health awareness allows us to casually and confidently bring up these aspects of the debate on firearms that are completely ignored. They have to be ignored by the other side because they need to put suicide in the numbers so that their numbers look big. But if they understood, or once people understand that 2/3 of the number, whatever the number is each year, you know, something like 2/3, half to 2/3 of that number are people that decide to take their own life for whatever reason, that's a totally different challenge than violence on the streets, which is what most people think of when they think of gun deaths. So Brooke's project gives the confidence to the gun owners on how to have conversations like this, as well as hopefully just gives us a better understanding of the situation, so that if we notice that somebody's having a hard time or a struggle, that we have things that we can actually bring up. We don't have to be scared to skirt the conversations, or whatever it's called. Anyway, Brooke does a great job on this. I'm being too wordy here, but it's worth checking out, and it's there every Saturday. Even if you don't watch the show, I'm going to encourage you to share the show and to let people know about it. This is sort of like first aid training. You don't need it every day, but when you need it, you're better off if having sat through a first aid class or two, right? Instead of just being completely unaware of what to do with a first aid kit, understanding at least what the pieces are for. You don't have to be a doctor, but at least in an emergency, you're not completely unaware of the difference between a gauze bandage and a Band-Aid, and then, how you might use each one. You don't have to be fluent. You don't have to be awesome, but being is better than just being an observer. All right. Speaking of suicide prevention, Edgar from Guns for Everyone did a short video here. Suicide prevention, it's okay to break the law. And he's irreverent and he's an anarchist or something, so he's always looking for ways to rock the boat on things. So this approach to talking about suicide prevention is essentially saying that because of the ignorant people who create laws in their overall goal to remove firearms from society so that the individual doesn't have the right to assert their own individualism, and to be at the mercy of the state for protection. Because of those laws that make it in some states illegal to transfer a firearm from one person to another, he's saying it's okay to break those laws and to take those firearms from a person who's dealing with an issue. Or if that person says, hey, can you take these for me? I don't want them around right now. It would be illegal in some states for someone to do that. And Edgar's his position is essentially, we'll break that law. Like, get them guns out of the possession of that person who's in stress so that you save that person. It's an interesting aspect, and that catch-22, that dilemma of morality and legality is unjust. And the representatives who create those laws are culpable. Is that the right word? They're responsible for the situations that they create. And if we don't illustrate it, the other side has no interest in illustrating their hypocrisy and their ill intent or their ill results of their intent. So if it's up to us to illustrate these things. It's essentially the kind of stuff that Brooke talks about in a different way, and Edgar's just hitting it right to the more of a kick to the throat. But these are the kind of issues, these catch-22s, these dilemmas of legality are created by people who don't know what they're doing and create situations where people get stressed out, typically by leaving the military and law enforcement, who've either transitioned out of their jobs or are on the job still and are dealing with issues of stress psychologically or physically, and suicide ends up momentarily being the solution, and now we're left with the consequences. And we often look at the stress of the individual and the family involved, and no one at the time, because it would be not the right thing to do, but at the time the actual creation of the situation, the political environment, doesn't get the blame for creating the problem. And instead, of course, they want to cast the blame to something else. They cast it at the gun. And we're right back to that same defending the firearm again. So seeing people who are attacking this situation from different angles it's the biggest fight we've got, period. 2/3 of all the gun deaths are suicide. All of those people who are committing suicide are U.S. citizens, and they're choosing that option because they've been failed. Like, people have failed them. And the political people who stand up and suggest that they're there to prevent these issues get to walk away because no one's laying it on their steps. We can do a lot better. Yeah, we've got national level organizations that sue the shit out of people because it costs $25 to start a lawsuit and then $1 million to fart around behind the scenes, to do stuff with it. Then come up for air every once in a while and say how great their lawsuit or success rate is. Yet we still have suicide. So are we gaining anything, or are we paying attention to the one arm that's flapping? We have more than one arm. All right, we're going to keep moving to Massachusetts. So Toby from Cape Gun Works is, I think, one of the largest entities in Massachusetts with a voice. There's Riding Shotgun with Charlie. There's the Goal organization themselves. But I'm pretty sure anybody else with a voice from Massachusetts fled the state to a freer state. and maybe gives it some lip service. But Toby's still there. He's got the gun shop and other, he's got his, his roots there. So he's not leaving, and he's trying to inform and create awareness of the situation there in Massachusetts. The name keeps changing, but right now it's House Bill 4885. So essentially, they have been attacked by their representatives to, I don't know, like, there's no reason for them to have started this war on gun owners. So I think it's a virtue signal for the rest of the country, or some sort of a play in a larger strategy from, the national level. But we're seeing Massachusetts just take an unreasonable amount of abuse with this H 4885. And since their legislator meets every 72 hours, they don't really, it's not difficult for them to just make a constant onslaught of these attacks on our rights, or on their rights, I guess. So this happened very quickly, this bill, and it was done unscrupulously. They actually took a bill that was different, some kind of a funding bill, and essentially gutted it, added all this text to it, and then let it run through the finish line without any of the normal checks and balances. So this was really pushed on Massachusetts. No one voted for it except for representatives, and they have a very left-leaning political situation there, obviously. So the one option that was left to the people in Massachusetts was to recall the bill, and they had enough signatures to start that, and now they'll be circulating petitions to collect 50,000, or more realistically 100,000 signatures, in order to challenge the bill and to get it off the fast track and put it onto a route or onto a path that requires the state to vote for the changes in the gun laws, instead of the legislator just making these decisions. So there is some optimism in Massachusetts. So there is some bright light that, the people can create awareness on this situation. Now, if we're going to depend on the hundreds of thousands of gun owners in Massachusetts, when we have something like, 30 million gun owners in the country, it's pathetic. We have an opportunity here to see the entire country rally around Massachusetts and put the weight of our collective group of firearms owners and the industry and everything else up against some belligerent representatives in a state. So we're either going to be spectators and chew popcorn while the stuff happens in Massachusetts, or our national level organizations are going to do something worthy and create something to challenge this, so that the rest of this country can not just sit there and watch, but do something. Imagine if a whole bunch of people in the country just lifted a little finger to help Massachusetts, and Massachusetts comes out of it as a gun-friendly state. What would that do for the other states and for the collective appetite? We'd want to start lifting fingers for New York and for Connecticut and for New Jersey and Rhode Island, right? Well, potentially. Let's see. Hopefully there's some money in it somewhere so that one of the organizations grabs on that. All right, so switching gears, this show called Jubilee happened, or is a thing, and they had this gun debate where they had 4 people who I've never heard of, well, Black Rambo and 3 other people I've never heard of, and then 4 other people I've never heard of, just 4 regular people who were there to be the pro-gun and the anti-gun side of this quote-unquote conversation. That's all it really was. It wasn't a debate. So you had a bunch of people who were anti-gun that had never done anything more than watch the news, and then you had some people that are pro-gun who I haven't really had any experience with conversations. So it was, it was a thing. I don't know. I'm assuming Jubilee is some kind of liberal situation, because they approach this so nonchalantly and shittily. Shittily, is that a word? In a shit way. Like, they didn't put much effort into this, and I became aware of it because what's he call himself now? The Gun Show? No. Yeah, Gun Show Radio or something like that. Whatever Armed Atlas used to be, or whatever he's called now. he did this reaction video that I seen coming, so I went and seen what this thing was all about. But his video got cut off like 20 minutes in. So you get some of Armed Atlas's insight. But this is what I really was interested in. This Hannah, what's her name? Hannah Cox. I never heard of her before, but she was one of the people in the debate. And she's some kind of a political person who gets off on knowing a bunch of political stuff and constantly talking about political things. And guns are not her thing, but she is competent, I guess, to be on this panel. And she made a bunch of points during this. Maybe it's like a 2-hour show. So she makes a bunch of points during the show, and then during the editing, they would put these little blurbs up to fact check or to offer more info at the bottom, kind of like DVD extras as they were having their conversation. And the stuff that they would flash on the screen either had nothing to do with what she was talking about or like missed the mark. So this is her chatting for an hour about all the ways that they didn't understand what she was talking about and her reiterating her position. It was pretty good. It's listening to someone who's like interested in debating and is a conservative. So she assumes she's supposed to like guns and she owns a gun, but that's is essentially as much as she knows about guns. So it would be good to see her sit down with someone who knows what they're talking about and give her some more ammunition so that she's more competent and capable having a conversation about guns. Because right now, all she's got is old NRA, like little lines, like what do they call them? Little sayings and stuff. Armed Atlas, hopefully he'll have the rest of his show up. And then the show itself, I don't know if you want to watch it. It's if you're super bored. There's so many other things that are worth watching. This was just a bunch of nothing, really. Black Rambo is definitely not. He's on our side and everything, but he's not good. He just basically gets up there and talks like some gun owner who's passionate but not competent in talking about the subject. And the anti-gun people were useless. They've never had the conversation before. So they should have been educated during the show, but instead they were just challenged. So it was essentially nothing. As far as I can tell, there was nothing accomplished in the show other than another version of let's present our positions and leave it at that. All right, so next we're getting into Maj had a conversation with Judge Joe Brown. I've only watched about a chunk of that, but I've got it up here somewhere as a tab. I'll keep watching that as I'm working on some other things here. It seemed pretty interesting. Then we have 4 boxes talking about the ATF trying to get rid of the AR-15s. I don't know if I must have watched it, but I don't remember that one. Then riding shotgun with Charlie. He drives around, talks to people from the Second Amendment community, and he's talking to Mike from Gun Owners Action League. Guess what? Talking about what's happening in Massachusetts. So some of the heavy hitters in Massachusetts are Goal and riding shotgun with Charlie, who didn't move out of the state whenever it started to get tough there. Then we've got the American Suppressor Association talking about an FPI pin, Universal something identification number. So essentially, if you have a social security number that's goofy or your name is very similar to a bunch of criminals, then you can get this universal identification number from the FBI, and that'll allow your 4473s and your suppressor form 3s, I guess, to go through smoother or with less issue, because that ID that you create with them will essentially alert them that you're not that criminal or whoever, or that from that list of criminals or something. So I'd rather see American Suppressor Association get rid of the NFA, but they're definitely doing both things. I think they're constantly trying to do that to some extent, but there's no real initiatives to that end. So until that happens, or while they're sitting there, they continue to grease the wheels of bureaucracy. So I guess it's a good thing, but I don't want to see bureaucracy become comfortable. I want to see bureaucracy become eliminated. We don't need the bureaucracy. We don't need an easier, comfortable bureaucracy. We need the lack of bureaucracy. So I'm kind of both ways with Americans Press Association. I support them, but I just wish they were getting rid of the NFA instead of facilitating the comfortable NFA. All right, speaking of, that was the end of the two-way stuff. We're going to get into the gun talk here. We're about 40 minutes in, so I guess I'm chatting pretty good today. We missed the show last week completely, and I debated whether I should go back and catch all the stuff I missed the week before, because there was some good stuff the week before this, but I didn't, and I didn't want this show to be like 2 hours long. So we'll get into the gun-related stuff here. And I always put She Fires at the beginning of the gun-related stuff. She's 2A and everything, but she's and she works for the Gun Owners of America, and actually, hosts or runs their table for them at events. Completely volunteer, from what I understand. Organization that makes tens of millions of dollars a year is dependent on volunteers to travel to places to set up. Not saying it's despicable, it's just unnecessary. But anyway, She Fires does her live chat on Sundays, and she keeps a community together of gun owners who are interested in just having conversations about topics. And let's see, this week it was chatting about her travels after getting back from Dallas, but evidently she's not at Goals. I thought she went to Goals. So we'll see what she chats about this week. Definitely worth checking out, paying attention each week. We also have her doing, so she had her show, but she also posted a video of some of her adventures in Dallas as a traveler, going around and eating and experiencing the town and seeing some of the sights. I appreciate that. So many people, especially once they sell out, they go to an event and all you're going to hear about is their selfies with who the hell they care about, who they met. Who cares about that unless you're literally only worried about the BS of the gun industry, the who's socializing with who of the gun industry. So selfies are ridiculous and waste of time. Or you get just what's on the table, whoever they're getting paid or whoever they're trying to chat up to get paid from. Here's what they got. Here's the new grip angle. Here's the new freaking optics thing. Here's the new hand guard or whatever's popular at the time. Here's the new holster or something. There's only like 4 things that are new every year. And the people that, have sold out and are just there to pay attention to the loot are never going to even pick their camera up from the table. You barely even get to see the booth half the time. You're only looking at the product because the product is what they're selling. So the people that take their cameras and look around and show us, the people that aren't there, the actual facility and how large the event is, how it's laid out, I find that ultimately valuable. So thanks to She Fire for being one of those people who actually pays attention to the event in its entirety, which is actually archiving it for all of us, letting us all experience it. And then, if people did that every year, we'd be able to experience the show itself and its growth and its shrinking and it's growing and it's an evolution. So thanks to She Fires for being one of those folks, one of the very few people like that actually pay attention to the whole event. All right, getting down into more gun stuff. Our friend up in Wyoming has been doing more live shows. So if you're interested in talking hunting and hunting rifles and stuff like that, check out Bullets for Bucks. I thought this was a great perspective. San Diego Gun Owners has been hosting the lead talks. So instead of TED Talks, it's lead talks, and having different instructors on talking about, their different philosophies, I guess, and things like that on training. I think training is a lot like guitars or martial arts or cooking. Like, you can make a pizza, but you can make a pizza about 1,600 ways. You can play a song, but you can play it multiple ways, right? And firearm training is like that. You can learn to draw, but there's going to be about 16 different ways that people might, draw a firearm. Maybe if you're in competition versus if you're in a gunfight versus if you're a law enforcement officer and you have rules of engagement, so everybody's going to have their own experience and perspective on these different elements of firearms education. And I learned in the early 2000s when I started to document some different training schools and instructors going to different classes and stuff, how super interesting it is going to different firearms instructors. And as a content creator, it's super easy. As an instructor, it's actually just as easy and inexpensive. It doesn't have to cost you really much more than getting yourself to the class most of the time. But if you want to experience the classes and take the classes, it could cost a little bit. But if you're if you're trying to build your skill level, then why would you only go to one instructor? Like, if you're trying to actually increase your own abilities and knowledge, why wouldn't you go? Would you only read one book, or would you read 3 or 4 books to see a spectrum or a complete picture? That's what going to different firearms instructors offers. Plus, if you listen to a Marine tell you how to shoot a gun versus a police sniper versus a hunter versus a competition shooter, they're all going to bring a different group of experience to the mix. So trying different firearms instructors is not only useful, it's critical for a really enhanced education, but it's also super interesting and can be fun. And as a content creator, you can make it lucrative. You're allowed to make money without just selling people grip angles all the time. You can make money in making people aware of the different options that are out there. Speaking of grip angles and red dot plates and whatnot, one show that I do listen to that talks about that kind of stuff is the Gun and Gear Review podcast, mainly because they're not shoving it down anybody's throat. They're just out there experiencing stuff and playing with stuff and then having a conversation on Tuesdays about it. What happened? What did you do? How did that fall off of there? Which dog to blame for that? I'm blaming you because you're in here. Mello couldn't have done it. She's outside. Little thing fell off of a solar panel, and this dog is acting like he had nothing to do with it. So anyway, the Gun and Gear Review is worth listening to. That's on Tuesdays, or I guess you can listen to it on any podcast platform you want to. Gear Report are friends from one of the Carolinas. I don't really remember which Carolina. But Jeff does the Gear Report show on Thursdays. Check that out if you want. Talk about gear and whatnot. So I talked about lead talks. This week they had Jim Bellinger talking about the right mindset for effective firearms training. So that was the lead talks this week. I think those come out on Monday. Then we've got I forgot what his channel name is. Some with gardens. Look how long it takes YouTube to open.
Today will be the first time that I have ever harvested a shower sponge from my garden.
Come on.
Yes,
look how long
a shower
it's taken.
sponge, y'all. Stand by.
So Black Guns and Gardens does a pretty cool channel where he's usually gardening, but he's a gun channel, so he'll have some talk about guns. I honestly don't look at his gun stuff, but definitely like the garden stuff. Out here in Arizona, our gardens, we can have good gardens and stuff, but you definitely got to throw water at them. I like watching people who live in parts of the country where they can have lush gardens. I'm going to just say more easily because it's always easier to act like somebody else has got it easy. Everything takes work. But anyway, his channel's pretty fun. He's talking about loofahs, and I just happened to be watching something else about loofahs, so I thought it was just interesting. So anyway, just to format another fun channel that's incorporating 2 hobbies. You can do this. You're allowed to incorporate more than one thing on a channel and be successful. So really cool channel. He does some great video editing too, so he's obviously a fan of the editing and enjoys that part of it. Speaking of somebody who enjoys what they're doing, Gizzard is up at Goals. That weird, the Guns of America thing that's happening right now in Knoxville. And because I didn't do the show last week, I figured I'd put his show in here. He didn't do one this week. Hillbilly took over his show. Let's see. AR Guns went live this morning, I think. I think he just did this. Or wait, was this yesterday? I guess he did this yesterday. But always a treat, bringing the people together, having conversations. AR Guns is typically focused on reloading and that kind of stuff, but he's not only reloading. He'll chat about whatever and brings a bunch of people together. So it's always cool to see people that aren't in this for some kind of payoff, who just enjoy bringing people together. It's ultimately critical for our community to have people getting together. for more than just commerce. So I really appreciate the folks that host these live shows like AR Guns. Speaking of people that host shows that keep people together, we've got Foss doing, I think we got three things in here this week. We got the mouse party and the other mouse party. So that was, because I missed a week, we had the two different Wednesday night mouse parties. And then every other week on Saturday nights, he'll host the overnight show. He's up to episode 94 already. And this week we talked about freedom versus security. So if you want to check that out, there won't be another one of those shows till not this weekend, but next weekend. All right, then we get into the radio shows. Looks like DJ took off. Thanks for the other people that are here, though. You're allowed to chat if you're on X, just like I brought up DJ's comment over here. If you say something on X, it comes up on my StreamYard over here, and I can bring it up on the screen. Just like Saint said stuff right there. So next up, we'll take a look at some radio shows. I started listening to Rapid Fire Radio back when Toby was on with Riding Shotgun with Charlie. I listened to that show right after I heard Toby on the radio out here in Arizona. Like, I was just minding my business one Sunday morning, and Toby was on the radio out here, and he was talking about 2A, not just guns, but 2A. So I was definitely excited, and I went and found his YouTube channel and started listening to the show live on YouTube instead of the recording, and then been listening ever since. So that was a couple years back now. Toby's definitely, I would say, stands alone as being a show that's there to promote his shop and his adventures, but also the situation in Massachusetts, which unfortunately, like we've talked about, is getting pretty bad, or has gotten pretty bad. So anyway, this week they do a show on Wednesday, they do a show on Tuesday, and they do a show on Sunday, in addition to right now all kinds of extras. Getting people like Q&A and up to date on the different changes with the situation they have there. But this week on his Wednesday show, they do the first hour just kind of talking and chatting with the people that are live. And then the second hour is an interview. And this week they had the Liberal Gun Club, people from the Liberal Gun Club on. I think I fell asleep right in the middle of that show, so I have not seen that interview. I'll have to watch that. On Tuesdays, Toby hosts a segment of the Grace Curley Show, which is a radio show in Boston, and they talk about Second Amendment and 2A for like 45 minutes or maybe less now. And then he does a show on Tuesdays, and then I usually have the California, or what's it, the San Diego Gun Owners does Gun Owners Radio show on Sunday right after She Fires. Actually, it's kind of overlapped She Fires a little bit. I just didn't link to it this week, and that was just a mistake. Normally that's in there. We're not going to go over to gun calendars because the show's running kind of long, but we do post over on guncalendars.com events like the goals thing that's happening right now, pieces of history, things that, anniversaries and things that have happened. There we go. There's nothing to buy there. It's just literally a calendar with lists of rallies and different industry events and shoots and different things that are happening in the community on a regular basis, or things that are, just happening once, as well as, just like the Marine Corps birthday and that kind of stuff. So this month is a neat month. August had the anniversary of Red Dawn, and it's also the date that Skynet became self-aware. August 29th, 1987 at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Skynet became self-aware. So I always throw that in the calendar as well. Anyway, you get all kinds of stuff like that over at guncalendars.com. And again, thanks to our Patreons. There's a scroll at the bottom of the screen saying thanks to our Patreons for making our projects possible. Gun Calendars is one of those. We're gun websites because we have a lot of websites out there. AskGunQuestions.com is one of them, where people can ask questions. Tony and I get together on Saturdays and answer those. That's been out there for 17 years. And Gun Calendars, I forget how old that one is, like 5 or 6 years old. These are projects where we're just trying to get information out there. The internet is a giant set of data, and that data is recorded and interpreted by lots of different things like search engines and now AIs. So what we're trying to do is with the websites is create awareness, normalize guns, and just have information available for all those automated and kind of I guess automated systems that scrape and search the internet. Without the information there, they only get the point of view from the antis. So we really do appreciate the patrons to make it possible to keep those servers up, to give us the time to work on those projects. Over the years, we've spent just hours. I mean, I can't even say, like, probably months and months and months of time creating all the resources on Minuteman University, on some of the different buyer's guides and things. So much thanks and much respect to our Patreons, the people that are capitalists and they financially support what we do. Most people are dropping like $5 a month, maybe a couple of bucks a month, and then a couple of people drop $25 a month. And we really do appreciate it. It all adds up. It all accumulates and pays for the servers and the software that keep everything online, and then some time, which allows me to actually spend time on these projects without going into debt. So I really appreciate their efforts. And you can be one. You can just jump over to Patreon. There's links somewhere, and then be a channel member over here on YouTube. YouTube takes like 30%. So if you want to be a YouTube channel member, that's awesome. But it's just Patreon is a better deal. Patreon, like 4% or something. Like most of the money heads over to our projects. Don't throw a link in here. So let me throw a link, or did DJ throw a link? He may have. Yep, DJ did. Thanks. So there's now a link up on the screen there for our Patreon if you want to check it out. Again, much appreciated. We're capitalists. I'm trying to get out of my debt right now. I'm really close to being out of debt, but I got into some massive debt doing Second Amendment stuff without really paying attention to the money side. I'm still not going to charge you for nothing over here. I make my money elsewhere. But as I get out of debt, I really do appreciate the Patreons to make it possible for us to keep all this stuff online. We wouldn't have been here without the Patreons. Like, it would have all fallen apart middle of last year. Let's see. So then we have the military interviews that we're going to take a look at. And you might look at this and go, I don't care about the military, or the military scares me, or like, I wasn't in the military, so I shouldn't listen to these. That's all bullshit. These are super interesting conversations for the most part. Okay, that didn't work. I tried to mute that cough fit. Anyhow, these are conversations that are super interesting. Yeah, they might talk about some military stuff, but for the most part, they're not like just saying weird stuff. This is made for the public. But you learn about some of the jobs or some of the things that happened, and you understand the perspective of these humans, the human beings that did these things, and then where that fits in their lives. Most everybody joins the service when they're young, 18 or younger, and are out after a full couple of years before they're 30. So we're doing all this stuff when we're very young, and we live with the results of that, either physically or mentally or both, our entire lives. And most of these conversations are with people that are long out of the service. So these conversations are focused on their military service, but then become or get into so much more. Everybody's out of service life is different. So these conversations include a lot of that. And there's so many lessons that come from warfare, not just advances in technology, but specifically for the gun community, the advances in the understanding of traumatic brain injury and the stress associated with trauma. That, and again, we bring this back to suicide. The veteran suicide rate is embarrassingly high, and it is pretty much the main driver of gun deaths in this country. And it's ignored completely by the other side, of course, because they could give a shit about military people or the consequences of a military service. And if the people in the military get stressed out and end up offing themselves, it plays into the antis 100%. So I'm not saying they live for it, but they certainly aren't going to do anything to end that. That is their money. So to understand from these actual people affected, to understand from them, and to hear the advances in the awareness of the physical harm or the consequences of the physical harm that the military occupations make the human body endure, is incredible. Like back in the day, you just did stuff and you'd shut up and do it, and then the consequences of it were your problem. That's not the case anymore. And the branches and the organizations and the units that are understanding this and then challenging the status quo are amazing. So not every one of these talks about all of that, but all of this stuff is brought to light. And then there's also just exciting, interesting conversations, and people are talking about books, and in so many cases, it's about their life after the service, which is affected by the service, driven by their time in service. So it's all relevant, but then their after service lives are as varied as anything else. So in this case, we're talking, that first one was talking about a CIA ground branch. So every unit, well, we always talk about the branches of government or the departments of the executive branch. So you've got the military, and then you've got CIA. Well, CIA has a military unit. They call them ground branch. So essentially, they're like commandos in the CIA. When the CIA has to do something where they need commandos, they can ask other units to help them, or they can just have their own unit. And that's what this guy was. So interesting to hear about that. And he was in quite a while ago, so it was interesting to hear about his adventures and what the CIA does and where they sent him and stuff like that. Then this next one, and that was Team House. The next one is a Tuesday show on Team House where they talked about drones. Drones are super interesting, and we're going to be going into drone warfare faster than you can imagine. So where we used to have a nuclear threat, we're now going to have a much different threat going forward. When you incorporate AI and cameras and drones, and you get swarms, lingering munitions, it gets pretty crazy and pretty scary. But guess what? Things move, and things are less scary when you understand them, I guess. So some of these podcasts and things offer insight into these things so that you're not going to be caught off guard when, a drone suddenly drops out of the sky right in front of you and scans your face. That's not really going to happen because they'll be able to scan your face from farther away than you can touch them. Now we're talking about Ironclad. I just got done listening to this before I went live. And super interesting. I hate the editing on Ironclad. I'll continue to say that. Of all the things I recommend, this is the least visually appealing to me. I do not like their editing. The way they cut, the way they place their cameras, it's unique, and I don't like it. But they do have interesting conversations. So Change Agents is one of the channels or one of the programs on Ironclad that I pay attention to. And this is an hour-something conversation talking about Clearview AI, which is essentially a company that scrubbed the entire internet for every face. And they have something like, I forget how many billions of faces in their inventory. And essentially, if you give it a face, it will tell you who that person is and show you everything they've ever done online. It's no big deal. And they sell that information to military and law enforcement. So if you want to hear about that, you can go check that out. This one is just a kind of a good conversation, but just a conversation about a guy who was in service and got a Purple Heart. I think he was Army. It was an interesting conversation. It was certainly not the best. It wasn't bad or anything, but it just wasn't, they didn't touch on anything super new or anything. And then let's see, this one was another Team House talking about, that one was from Friday night. This one was actually this evening's, or what happens right before this show when it's live is Team House. This was them talking about a guy who was JSOC medical. So Joint Special Operations Command is sort of the hierarchy. There's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force and Coast Guard. But now there's also JSOC, Special Operations Command. And this guy was a medic for that organization. All right, and then we get to what we did this week on Saturdays. Tony and I get together and do the Ask Gun Question show. Since last Saturday's show coincided with the 40th anniversary of Red Dawn, we ended up talking about Red Dawn quite a bit. Best movie ever made. And on Tuesday of last week, I ended up kind of going through and going for like half an hour researching and searching for mental health awareness organizations to try to break them down between military, law enforcement and EMS, hunters and gun owners, and maybe that was it. So to just try to archive, where we're at today with organizations that are focused on mental health awareness. And that's what we try to do on Tuesdays. Our goal would be to go live every Tuesday with workshops. So thanks to the Patreons that are here. If we had maybe twice as many Patreons, I could really consider doing stuff on a more daily basis. We're going to be working on getting some sponsors and stuff to start getting into that again as it gets to the end of the year and the election season. Hopefully we can contribute something useful by going live every day. If it's something you'd like to see happen, like I say, jump onto Patreon, jump onto the channel members, throw a couple of bucks at us. It all adds up and allows me to make that decision a lot easier. But if you know somebody that runs a gun shop or something and they might want to support a project like this one, have them get in touch with us. They can send them over to our Patreon or have them talk to me directly. But would like to get the show going on a more daily basis again. And I'm interested to know from the people that are listening, this is an opportune time to ask in the middle of the night on a late show like this, but would you rather, for the people that are listening as a podcast or listening to this in the future, if we were going live daily, would you rather have us go live daily at noon or at midnight? I'm not going to sway it. Just feel free to let us know, if you'd rather see this be an overnight show or a daytime, normal time of day type of show. There's advantages and disadvantages to both for sure. But since most of the people that listen to this are listening as a podcast, it really doesn't matter too much when we record the show. So, because the people that listen as a podcast are going to listen at their discretion when they feel like it. All right, that's the end of the show. We want to thank everybody for being here. It was the middle of the night. We had Saint participate and DJ, Vulcan all jumped in. But that was it. So if anybody else wants to be part of the show, all you got to do is comment. We do this live as opposed to a scripted recording because I value the interactive nature of the internet. So I really do value the people that participate that way. That's the wrap up this week. We'll see you next week. We'll be around tomorrow working, or I guess later on today, working on a project instead of the Ask Gun questions, since Tony is at goals. And then we'll be back next Saturday with Tony to hear about how it went. I'll throw a couple of commercials up here to end it. And thank you again for watching.
This is Earl Benson reporting from downtown Topeka, where Gizzard Gary is rampaging through the city. Authorities have asked the public to stay indoors. They believe he will tire soon and need a nap. Gizzard Gary can normally be seen on Foul Territory, Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the channel members chat. Stay safe and give him the bird. Earl Benson signing off.
I think that's still the old one, but everybody knows when Gizzard shows.
Sir, why are you in Barry's fishing net? He ran right into it. Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty apes. First off, that is incredibly rude. You ran straight into Barry's fishing net. It's ruined. How is Barry gonna fish now?
I'm just trying to find some patches and some stickers.
Well, all you have to do is go to gearwebsites.com and you can find 2A-related stickers and patches. And even if you need web consulting, technology consulting, 3D printing, anything like that, gearwebsites.com. Now, please get out of the net.
I'm sorry.
Jerk.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
Vulcan's asking Pacific time or Eastern time. I do everything with metric time, so I do everything for the East Coast people. They don't like to do math, and people on the West Coast, we're so used to doing math because we're so proficient in offsetting the times, because people on the East Coast never think about time zones. I do everything in East Coast, so midnight Eastern. All right, thanks for the question, and have a great night. or rest of your day, I guess.